So again, welcome to that Skilled Inspirational Academy. So we are today sharing that demo session for that AWS cloud. So in this demo session, we will cover what exactly is cloud, why now we need to learn cloud, and what are the competitors in the market for the cloud and what services they are providing. So apart from that, what profiles we can make in a cloud. So in this course, we will cover from very basics, from beginner to AWS associate architecture to, then we will cover that specialty certifications content that covers the cloud networking as well as the security. So at the end of this demo session, I will also share you, these are some company websites from where you can also enroll yourself for the content related to that cyber security and the cloud securities. And these are the reachable contacts for us. You can reach us, or if you have any queries, you can directly call on these two numbers. And this is our email ID through which you can send your queries or whatever you have a requirement from us. So as Hemu sir already told, my name is Manpreet and I have around 14 plus years of experience in information security. I've worked with multiple organizations for that cloud securities, information security. So I am AWS security certified, Microsoft security certified. I'm also CCSP cloud security certified professional from ISC Scale and architect. And I'm working currently as an architecture consultant for multiple organizations. So I worked with the financial banks, research organizations, trading organizations. So I'm giving a consultancies as well as that training is my hobby, right? So we will learn very basic things about this cloud, right? So the only prerequisite for this certification or this course is that you should have a basic network and the IT knowledge. So when I'm saying that basic network and routing knowledge, IT knowledge, like you should know what is TCP, what is IP address, right? So what is routing? So what is DHCP services? What is DNS? What is the role of load balancer? So we will cover all these things in the details, but you should have at least that basic understanding, right? So then you will get a better clarity. So now let's start with our presentation. So, okay, so now what is cloud, right? So is a cloud any organization or any data center or what it is, right? So like this cloud is basically a platform through which the cloud service providers are providing their services to all the customers all over the globe. So they are creating their platforms on the cloud, right? And then they are selling that platforms to the customers, right? So in cloud, we have two terminologies. One is cloud service provider, one is cloud customers, right? So before discussing about who is cloud service providers and who is customers, and even we have a cloud service partners, third party partners, regulatory cloud agencies who managing the compliances, all these things. Before discussing that, let's understand what is cloud, right? So what is cloud computing? So when we say what is cloud computing, so the cloud computing is a model for allowing convenient on-demand access for anywhere to share a pool of computing resources, right? So what it means that in the cloud computing, right? So whatever the service you want, like in the legacy data centers, if you want to deploy a new server, right, you have to raise a request to them that we need this rack space. we need the power connectivity, we need a network ports, then what will be the cost you have to negotiate on, then you have to take a multiple approvals, that all these processes were taking too much time, right? So in that cloud computing, as he says, that you do not need to take any approvals, you do not need to coordinate with infra team for that rack space, you do not need to be worry about the power, you do not need to be worry about the network ports or the securities, right? So this is, as I said, this is on demand, right? So you will have the access on the portal, so whatever you want, you can directly build that services, or you can directly create that service for your account, right? So this is as per your requirement, so you do not need to waste that time to coordinate with a multiple teams or to take us approvals, right? And from anywhere, so this is globally accessible, right? So this is accessible over the public internet, so you do not need to be create a IPsec VPN tunnel, or you do not need a MPLS connections, right? So like if you are accessing Google, right? So Google is accessible anywhere. So what you need, you just need a browser on your laptop or on your mobile. So similarly, if you want to access a cloud management console to launch your services or to access your services, or something which you want to publish to the public customers, to your, or serve, you want to publish your services globally to your customers, so you just build your service on the cloud, and that once you will launch publicly, that will be accessible anywhere. And when I am saying convenient, that I already covered, that you do not need to coordinate with a multiple teams like network teams, that we need the public IP addresses, we need this private IP subnets, we need a network ports, right? Or we need routings from your end. And if you are going to deploy any server, you do not need to coordinate with a Windows team or a Linux team for that server hardware configuration. So everything you will control, you will pick what hardware you want, you will pick what OS you want, you will pick what security, what private IP addresses, what public IP addresses you will use. So everything you will control, and you do not need to be coordinate with anyone else, right? So it is very convenient. And the last thing, to share a shared pool of computing resources. So when I'm saying, one second, who is here?
Let me just stop his camera.
Okay, so when we say a shared pool of compute resources, so it means this is currently the definition of public cloud, right? So when it is says shared pool, right? So in the public cloud, when they will provide you one infrastructure, right, that will be not like a dedicated hardware or a dedicated server that will be aligned for your organization. That will be a one single hardware. On that, they will use a virtualization to create a multiple resources for multiple customers, right? So this is what we will discuss further in the next slides. So I hope you guys understand what is cloud computing. So when okay, so when I'm saying that for that cloud computing, so in the current market, we have three major cloud service providers, right? So first is AWS. You see that this is the Q1 report of 2023. So 32% market is captured globally by AWS cloud service provider. And on the second number, we have a Microsoft Azure, and the third is Google provide. So Google is also competing. So these are the three current top cloud service providers who are providing the services to the all the organizations. And this is the important part. You have to notice that like HCL's, Wipro, IBM, TCS, they have their own revenue like 5 billion to 10 billion, 11 billion, 12 billions, right, for 1 year. right? But here you see that in single one quarter that cloud organizations revenue is 63 billion. So you can understand that in 1 year how much business revenue they are getting just from a cloud services, right? So these are the three top cloud uh, service providers. So this is a Gartner report. I hope you guys understand that this Gartner is providing the best services. They are showing who are the leaders in the current market. So as per this Gartner report, once. Sorry. So as per this Gartner report, you guys can see that, right? So who are currently three leaders of this services? So first on the top leader is AWS, and on the second Microsoft, and then third is Google Cloud, right? So we picked our session for AWS Web Services, right? So that is the reason. So this is the AWS history, right? So this is not a recent service which is launched in the IT industry. So that AWS launched their services since 2002, right? So in 2002 they built the AWS platform, and since that they are keep launching their services. So the first service which they launched was a single queue services, right? This is a messaging service of the cloud. That SQS and SNS we will cover in that. So after that in 2006 they launched EC2, that is Elastic Cloud Computing. Then they roll out VPC, Virtual Private Cloud. So they are keep launching their multiple services, right? So as of now they have more than 200 plus services in their platform which they are providing to the cloud service customers. So when we say that cloud is now future, so this statement is not valid now, right? Because now cloud is not a future, it is a present. So if you worked in your organizations, you can analyze that most of the now managements are working to migrate their environment from on-prem to the cloud, right? So even the banking industries, financial industries, or the research organizations have already started their services and their infrastructures to migrate to the cloud, and most of the organizations has already completed 60 to 70% of their infrastructure to the cloud, right? Still like I can say is that in India 70 to 80% of the bank has been already completed 70% of their infrastructure to the cloud, their databases, their applications, and their services. So this is the target of whole IT industry, where they are saying that by end of 2025, their 80% of infrastructure will be on the cloud, right? So I will show you that what is the current demand of the cloud computing engineers or the architectures, and how much is the currently delivery, right, we have in the market. But before that, you guys see that already by end of 2025, 80% of the cloud on-prem infrastructure will migrate to cloud, right? So if you will learn in this year, you will get exposures with the organizations to migrate their services. And by the end of 2025, when all the services will be on the cloud, right? Then if you are not aware about the cloud setups, about the cloud technologies, how these connectivities works, how we can secure that, right? Then you cannot survive on the industry with that 20% of the infrastructure, right? So you have to learn a cloud, right? So as I said that you have to, if as most of the market is captured by AWS, right? So you have to learn AWS, but it is not like that. Once you will learn AWS, that is enough, right? Because now we have a multi-technology demands in the market. So you have to learn AWS, you have to learn at least one more combination of the cloud with Azure or a Google. But again, as I said, that AWS is currently the top leader of the cloud service provider. So this is in the PPT, you can see that this is the demand of cloud engineers in the market, right? So as of now, if you see in AWS, the demand is a 44% demand, right? And right now, we have only 13% engineers with that skilled or profiles who are fulfilling their organization's requirements. So you can see that how much gap we have, right? So it is not like that after learning this skill, whether I will get a job, whether I will get a better options or not. Industry is already looking for that professionals who can fulfill that gap, because currently we have a huge gap for you can see that in the AWS, in the Azure, in the automation, in the DevOps, right? The demand in the market is very much high, but currently we do not have that proficiency of skilled engineers in the market, right? So we have a huge market for that cloud engineers, right? Whether it will be a AWS cloud or a Microsoft Azure cloud, right? So this is what I am saying, that this is now not a future, this is a present. So once you will learn this cloud services, then you can stand in the present, because after 2 years you will find difficulties to survive in the IT industry. Right now the future is, as you all everyone know, the future is artificial intelligence and machine learning. But where that artificial intelligence and machine learning is deploying, where these all setups are on the cloud, right? So to manage the artificial intelligence platforms, to secure your organization's artificial intelligence, or to handle that machine learning scripts or that systems, right? You have to be first understand what is cloud, right? How that cloud works, what are the infrastructures on the cloud, how we will manage that, how we will set up that, how we will secure that, right? So again, this is the present, and if you are not understanding that present technologies, in next 1 or 2 years you will be face very difficulties to survive in this IT industry. So now this our course is for AWS. So in this AWS cloud certification options, the first is that cloud practitioners. So this cloud practitioners is for those who are currently having a 0 years of experience in IT industry. So they are currently doing BTechs, BScs, or they are currently in the universities or in the colleges who would want to start a certification. So this is the cloud practitioner, where they are giving a very basic understandings like what is TCP, what is OSI model, right? So I hope that all the guys who joined this session have already 1 or 2 years of experience, right? So to start with that AWS solution architect associate, you need at least 2 years of experience in IT industry, right? So if you have a 2 years of IT industry, then you can directly enroll for that AWS solution architecture associate, right? And once you will be certified on that, then you guys can pick that solution architecture professional design certification preparation, where it will explain you that how to build that systems, right? So how to deploy all the services, how to set up or how to design a new applications. And if you don't want to go for a solution architect role, right, after that solution architect associate basic understandings, right, you want to move to that specialty exams, right, then these are the specialty exams in which you can cover security, advanced networking, machine learning, SAP, database or data analytics, right? And the persons who are from that coding platform backgrounds, coding profiles, right? They can pick that developer profiles with that sysops, system operations, or DevOps, and then they can go for that DevOps engineering professional, right? And these are the certification codes for that AWS, which as I said, that's these will start from that foundation to that solution architecture associates, and then DevOps, those who are from a coding profile, and if you guys are from network profile or from a Windows profile or from a security profile, right? So you guys can pick based on your networking, security, and all that stuffs. Okay, so once you guys will complete, I hope you guys are aware about that ISC scare, that is a certification body who is providing that trainings for that cybersecurity compliances design. So those who have I will say that 7 to 8 years of experience, and after learning that technical skills of that AWS, you guys have to definitely go for that CCSP, right? So this is, as I said, that ISC scare certification body exam. This is cloud certified security professional. So this exam will teach you to how to design, right? So how to plan the migrations, if your organization is going to deploy new systems. So what things you need to cover, how to do a risk analysis, how to do a gap analysis, how to perform a threat modeling, risk assessments, migrations processes, how to coordinate with the vendors for that legal processes, NDS documents, so all other stuff. So the persons who are currently leading that team, or they have a so much experience, and if they want to move to the cloud but not with that L1 or L2 engineers, they want to lead the team, or they want to manage that team, or currently on the manager's profile, they must go to that CCSP after the understanding of AWS or Microsoft Azure cloud, right? So as I said, that when we says that why we move to the cloud, right? So these are some basic reasons, right? So when I'm saying that why we have to move to the cloud, okay. So the first reason is, as I said, it's very simple and quick setup. So when I'm saying very simple and quick setup, what you needs to do, your organization needs to create one account on the AWS console, AWS management console, similar way you are creating account on the Gmail or on the Facebook, right? So after creating that account, you will have a management console access. So whatever the service you want to launch, just select that, like the application you pick from the Google Play Store, select and launch, similar way, right? And once you launch, then it will give you a lot of options that what security configurations you want to do, what network, so that things we will cover. But as I said, that this is very simple, right? So just you need to create one account, you need to log into that AWS management console, and then you have access of all the services. You can launch whatever you want, right? And if you want to create a further users, you can create a read-only users or with the least privileges users, and you can share with your team. So as I said, this is simple and quick setup. Second, a small monthly fees, pay as you go, right? So this is the very big reasons that why now organizations are moving to the cloud, just because to save the costings. Because in the cloud, you will not to pay for the electricity, you have not to pay for the rack spaces, right? So you have to pay for the service which you will use, like in the cloud data, like in our legacy data centers, right? So if we have we have to launch any website, or if we have to launch any application that even my organization or my vendors or my customers will access, right? So if they are accessing that service from weekdays, right, from Monday to Friday, right, uh, then at Saturday and Sunday there is no traffic, but still I have to pay for that 7 days to my data center, because on Saturday and Sunday they will consume the electricity, they will utilize their network ports, right? So they will cover their rack spaces. But in the cloud, if my services are used only in Monday to Friday, and Saturday, Sunday, if I will shut down that services, uh, then I have to only pay for Monday to Friday. Even if I have a one website, right, which is currently publicly accessible, right, then to deploy that public website, I do not need to build a server. We will discuss further that what are the cloud categories, right? So we can go for that PaaS solutions or a SaaS solutions, where like in the SaaS solution, software as a service, whatever the services I will use, I will pay for only that services, right? And if any triggers will happen, if I'm using any Lambda service or a function services, I will explain you, because some words might be new for you, right? So number of times that query will run, I have to pay only for that. I do not need one server where I will deploy operating system. Then on that, I will deploy that query or my automation system, right? So I will run only basis of the triggers of that function as a service will generate. So as I said, third point is scale as you grow, right? So it is not like that initially you were having that environment and now your users are increasing from 1,000 to 2,000 or a 5,000, and now you want to increase your servers, right? So it's not like that in the legacy data centers that you have to buy a new hardware, right? And your old hardware will be obsolete. No. So in this, you can increase the memory, you can increase the CPU services, you can increase the storage, you can increase the computing capability of same system, right? So whatever the requirement you have, you can add to your existing setups. And next thing is security is a shared responsibility, right? So the one of the other major reason is that, like, if your company is from a medical uh, or from a financial organization, right? So there you guys have to manage a HIPAA compliances, PCI DSS compliances, and NIST compliances, right? So once you will deploy your services to the cloud, right, and during that audits, you do not need to hire an internal auditor who needs to take care the responsibility of the year PCI DSS compliance or a HIPAA compliances. So once you will deploy your services, you will pick that compliances on the cloud, that okay, for my environment, I want that my environment needs to be managed with PCI DSS compliance. So all the compliance responsibilities will be managed by a cloud service provider. Yeah, but again, this is a shared responsibility. So I will cover that in the categories, that on which category what responsibility will be a customer's responsibility and what will be the cloud service provider's responsibility. And next point is reap benefits quicker, shorter lead time to the value. As I said, that to launch any service, I do not need to take multiple approvals, right? So whatever we want, if my organization or if my management is agree on that, right, it will hardly take 1 or 2 minutes, just few clicks, and your service or your application will be ready to use. And the another reason is that because here it has a no capex, right? So what it means, why organizations, because now organization, the main reason of moving the organizations is from capex to opex model, right? So in the capex model, organizations needs to purchase a hardware, they have to purchase a racks, or if they have to deploy their servers or their devices to the any third party private data centers, right? Then they have to purchase the space, they have to pay for the electricity, for the network services, they have to purchase the licenses, right? If you are using Microsoft operating system, you have to purchase a license. If you are using Linux or any third party SAP tool, you have to also take care of the licensing part, right? But here in the cloud, you do not need to worry about the capex model, you do not need to purchase the hardware. So only thing you need to worry is about opex model, operations model, right? So whatever the services you will use, you have to pay for that only operation part. So you do not need to invest on the hardwares on the capex model, because let's suppose currently you purchased some hardware, right? And after 3 years, as now your company is growing, now your company has a new demands, new requirements, then your old hardware will be obsolete, right? So that is the reasons now, due to these future perspectives, no company is now investing in their on-prem capex model. So all of the organizations are moving to cloud to save that huge amount of capex model. So that is the reasons now the IT budgets of all the industries are now shifting from capex to opex model. Then next thing, it is easy to use. As I said, that I will show you that console portal. From there you can also see that how easy it is used, and as I said, easy, less expensive to maintain. So I do not need to worry about that hardware, right? If there is any issue with that hardware, if it is crashing, right, it's all responsibility of that cloud service provider. So we will discuss this in that cloud categories, that on what, in which category, whose responsibility is what. Okay. Sorry, guys. You have.
If you want to delete everything to have written, you can just use this delete. There is a delete box, right? The below one, the below one. Yeah, this one, yes.
Yeah, thanks, Rahimo. Thank you. So the next thing, what we will cover in this course is that, right? So this is a very basic content, right? I will explain you in the detail. So in this, what we will cover, so we will cover IAM services in the cloud, right? So what is this? Identity and access management services. So in that we will explain you that how we can authenticate users, how we can authorize users, how we can enable the accounting, and if we have already on-prem Active Directory services, or we are using any third-party identity provider, so how we can integrate our cloud service provider with that third-party cloud service broker or a IDP or a Microsoft Azure um, Active Directory services, or your on-prem Active Directory server. So how we can integrate that. So authentication, identification, authorization, accounting, policies, roles, types of roles, how we can cover. So everything we will cover in this IAM, right? So then we will cover, there is one term that is called VPC, Virtual Private Cloud Network. So this is like just one branch of your organization. So in that VPC, we will create, in that region, we will create multiple VPC. So then we will create availability zone. We will take care of availability, resiliency. So everything. We will also cover the storage services, types of storage services like object-based storage, block-based storage, EBS-based storage, embedder storage. So everything, which storage will be take care of what type of services, which storage we need to connect to our servers, which storage we will take for a backups, right? Where we will take a snapshots, which service, which storage services we will use for BCP services, and then compute services. This is a EC2 Elastic Cloud Computing, that what hardware, what OS we need to pick for in which scenarios, right? And what are the other options of load balancing or public IP computing or public IP services, or internal subnetting, or connectivity of these compute resources with that elastic IPs. Then we will cover that load balancing. So what type of load balancings we have, like network load balancer or application load balancers, what are the SSL offloadings, what type of securities we can use in the load balancings. Then we will cover that DNS services in the Route 53. The Route 53 is basically a term in the AWS that is used for a DNS, right? So we will understand that how we can set up a DNS, how we can enable that DNS level securities, how we can connect that DNS with the third party like Cisco umbrellas or any other DNS security tools for securing that our DNS in internal DNS or external DNS services. Then we will cover infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a services. We will cover that databases services, how many types of databases we are using in the AWS, like relational databases, non-relational databases, and data lakes, big data, how we can secure that data, how we can manage a structured, non-structured, semi-structured data. What are the network services we are using in the cloud, like VPC peering, transit gateways, or the attachment IDs, routing, associations, propagations. What are the security services? So when I'm saying security services, we will cover all the security tools which AWS is currently providing in terms of layer 3 security to layer 7, like IPsec VPNs, VPN tunnels, remote VPN tunnels, your all DOS attacks, DDoS attacks, vulnerability assessments attacks, how we can perform a pen testings, how we can perform a vulnerability assessments, how we can check a vulnerability reports, what are the monitoring tools we are using. Then what are the billing and the notification services, what are the alarms, how we can trigger that, what designs of new services. If let's suppose we have to design any new application, or if we have to create a new database, right, then how we can design. So it is not like that in other legacy platforms that company will give you, okay, this is a F5 or this is a firewall, so you have to manage that. In the cloud, you have to know that what service you have to launch and where you have to launch and why you have to launch, right? You have to take care of costing, you have to take care of design, right? How, which service will integrate or which service will have an interoperability, right? Without interoperability, if you will launch and if it will not connect to your resources, then there will be a no use of launch, right? So you have to understand that. So we will explain you everything, right? So we will explain you how we can plan the migration of services from on-prem to cloud, right? This is what, how we can build a services, how we can build a systems. But in case if you have a already that application or services in on your on-prem office, right, then if you want to plan to the cloud, so what plannings, what things you need to be considered, what are the migration phases, right? How many types of migrations, like 6 migrations, we have multiple options, which option we have to pick for a migration, so what SDLC process we have to follow. Similarly, what is the life cycle management of data, your application and the services, how we can ensure that the compliances are fulfilled if somebody is making any changes, right? So how that alerts will be triggered that my compliance is breached, what was the changes, that everything we will cover. Then we will cover that static and routings of the network connectivities, what is the cloud formations, how we this is like infrastructure as a infrastructure as a code. So how with that scripts we can build all the EC2s or the VPCs or any cloud services. It is CDN, content delivery networks, like to provide a good performance of the web services to all over the globe. We can use edge services, that we will cover how we can use CDNs, right? So multi-cloud pairing. So like if I have some services in the AWS and some services in the Azure, so how we will connect these two different cloud service providers with each others, and how we can manage like I have multiple clouds in the multiple regions with the multiple service providers. So how we will manage their routings, how we will manage which traffic should go to which region and where it should be not allowed, right? So transit gateways. Then we will cover that design architecture, right? So these are the some basic contents which we will cover. Then in the security, right? So in the security, what things we will cover? We will cover that data protection. So when I'm saying that the data protection, we will cover all the phases of a data life cycle in terms of when it creates, when it stores, when it uses, when it is sharing, when it is backing up, archiving, and how we can destroy, right? So from encryption models to hashing models to availability models, right? Then we will cover the security of infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. So in the third point is like, in case if your application or your server is compromised, right? So in that case, what you have to do, right? Or if you see any incident, or if you see any ransomware or a virus or any of the layer 7 attack, like a cross-site scripting or SQL injection is injected in your environment. So in that case, what you have to do, right? So what should be a response management? What will be your identity and access management? How you can identify the user, types of identification like single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, IDP, OAuth services. So then we will cover key management systems of public keys, private keys, where we can store, when we have to use a key management system, when we have to use HSM. What are the FIPS security modules we are using? We will cover all the types of security from layer 3 to layer 7. Then what are the security, AWS security inbuilt tools we will cover? We will how we can deploy third-party security tools. When I'm saying third-party security tools, like if we have to deploy F5 in the cloud, if we have to deploy Palo Alto, if we have to deploy a Iron Port proxy or a Blue Coat proxy, or if I have to connect my all the services with the Zscaler, right? So if somebody is trying to connect my cloud, or we are providing some services to the public customers, then how we can use Zscaler or the Netscope SASB or CASB solutions. Again, from security terms, what things you need to cover, where you in the SDLC phases, where security needs to be joined for these migrations, what things you have to identify in terms of risk assessments in the gap analysis of the cloud architecture in terms of security. We will cover DNS and the load balancing security. So this, one second. All right, so this is the complete security content and the network content on the basic cloud associate architecture we will cover. So it starts from your, what is cloud, what are the services, what are models, what is free tier, how we can use IAM, how we can use incident response. These are the security services or the tool that I will not explain you, because these terms might be new for you, that what is guard duty, what is trusted IPs, what is inspector, what is WAF, what is security hub, right? So these all things we will cover in terms of incident response, in the logging and monitoring, in the network security, what is AWS Shield, what is IAM role, policies, federations, SML, single sign-on for cognitive mobile application securities, for the data protections, HSM, KMS, certificate managers. So in terms of networking and infrastructure securities, these are all the stuffs we will cover, that how we can build VPCs, how we can implement, how we can connect, right? Then deep dive of IPv4 to IPv6, your NAT gateways, your NAT instances, and your endpoints, and then the elastic cloud computing. As I said, that even in that single service, we have a multiple options, multiple features, multiple services, right? So it is just not like that. I will show you on the console that, right, even in the single service, how many types of features or the availabilities options we have, how we can manage their designs. This all will cover your monitoring, private IPs, elastic IPs, then the storage of S3, file uploads, versions, replications, life managements, buckets, right? Then EBS volumes, block volumes, how we can attach that, how we can manage the security of that storage systems, what policies needs to be deployed, how we can use for a backup purposes, right? And again, this is a VPC solution, that VPC pairing, how we will cover that BGP, how we will use transit gateways, how we will create a site-to-site VPN with the Palo Alto ASAs. If we are deploying our Cisco routers on the cloud, then how we can use, what is the endpoint, what is the SSL securities. Then this will be a load balancing, elastic load balancing, network load balancing, application load balancing. As I said, that in the load balancings, what are the features we can use, how we can secure based on the path-based routing, host-based routing. So all these things we will not cover just theoretically, because we have a console. So we will do all that practicals. As I said, that in that DNS, that term they are using a route 53 or R53, right? So what are the, how many types of DNS records? So what is a public hosted zones of DNS? How we can create alias, how we can do a routing based on the naming conventions or the alias, what are the health policies, geolocation routing, latency routing, weight routing, multi-value routing, these all things. And then we will cover content delivery network, how we can connect multiple cloud providers with our AWS cloud provider, or if we have to connect our on-prem environment, or multiple branches with our single cloud platform. Then what is identity and access management services, how we can authenticate users based on the single sign-on, or we want to use a multi-factor authentication, or if we have to create a guest user account and then we have to set up the security, what are the logging tools, what are the monitoring tools, how we can create alarms, how we can manage the financial billing alarm, right? All these, then these are the SNS, SQS services, these services. Then we will cover layer 7 firewall security, WAF, right? What types of attack it will manage, and where we can deploy layer 7 security, and where we have a constraints or where we can't deploy. So in that, where we can't deploy that WAF, then how we can manage that layer 7 securities, the system manager, security hubs, then data protection tools, what we are using. So these are all the stuffs that we will cover in this. Okay, so guys, just give me a 1 minute break. Okay, so when I'm saying that, right, so now we have some basic understanding what is cloud, right? So as I explained in the cloud definition, right? So if you will read AWS, if you will read Azure, if you will read Google or IBM Cloud or Aviatrix or ISC CCSP, right? So the basic, very basic cloud characteristics is, these are the 5 basic characteristic. One, you guys now, I think already know what is on-demand self-service, right? So you can directly log into the portal and whatever you want to launch, you can launch. You do not need to coordinate with the AWS cloud service provider. You do not need to take approvals, because they have all their services available on their management console. So you just need to select and you just need few clicks and that service will be ready. And second thing was resource pooling, right? So in your existing environment, you can add number of resources, you can add number of CPUs, you can add number of storage space, you can increase memory, right? So whatever you want, right? So you do not have any constraint, like you have only 8 GB of RAM. If you want, if you like, in ideal scenarios, your server is okay with the 6 GB of RAM, but now you have to run one large SQL query for unstructured data, which consumes high memory, right? For that specific time interval, you can increase your memory from 6 to 16 GB. And once your query will give you that output, you can again remove that 16 GB and you can scroll down and remove or move back to your 6 GB, right? So whenever you want to add multiple resources, you can, and when you don't want, you can release that and it will be back to your initial configuration. The third step was, it is a broad network access. So it is not like that in the current organizations, if you are not using a license on the firewalls for the remote VPN, so you cannot access, like in Cisco or a Palo Alto Global Protect or any Connect, you have a license of 30 users or you have a license of 100 users, right? So it is a broad network access. So users, any number of users from anywhere in the globe can access your services, right? So you do not need to be worried about the availability. Then, as it said, metered services or a metered services means that you have to pay for only what you are using and when you are using. It is not like that if you launched that service, then you have to pay for that. You have to pay for only that specific service trigger or the resources during that you are using. Like if your server is using as I take a previous example, 6 GB of RAM, right, for 22 hours, and only for 2 hours during that high traffic it picks 16 GB, right? So you have to only pay for 2 hours for that 16 GB. For rest of the 22 hours you have to pay for only 16 GB. So this is very clear. There is no any hidden charges, right? So when you will see a billing report, in the billing report it will give you that complete details, at what time what service was launched, by which user, from which region, and the duration of that service is from this time to this time. So there will be no hidden charges, right? So it will be a very clear. So that is why the organizations prefer clouds, because there is no any hidden charges. So you have to pay only for what you are using. And again, this is a rapid elasticity. So we will discuss later, right? So what is elasticity and what is scalability? Because most of the time people understand this is the same terminology. So it is not like same. So when it is saying that rapid elasticity, right? So as demands increase, it will increase the resources, and as soon as your demand will be decreased, it will automatically shrink, right? Like in the Amazon uh, app, right, or in a Flipkart, or any, when we have a festival sales, right? So thousands, millions of users are hitting, right? So for that specific 2 or 3 days, they are not adding multiple servers, right? So they will just pick that rapid elasticity. So as soon as the numbers will increase, the resources will increase, cloud service provider will automatically add the resources in terms of vertically, in terms of horizontally. When I'm saying horizontally, it will automatically add new servers in your systems or in your environment. And when I'm saying vertically, it will automatically add a memory, it will automatically add a CPU, it will automatically add a storage. And when that demand decrease, it will automatically shrink back. It will be automatically roll back to the previous configuration, right? So you do not need to be worried about that. So that cloud, if you will enable that elasticity feature for your services, then cloud provider will take care of that, right? So this is the best reason. That is why organizations are now moving to the cloud, because here we have a shared responsibility, right? Then, as I said, that these are some cloud categories, right? So when we have to deploy anything on the cloud, right, or if we have to migrate anything on the cloud, right, we must aware about that. What are the categories cloud service providers are providing to us, and which category suits as per our requirement, right? So this is you guys need to understand very, very clearly, right? because in every single migration or in every single deployment or even managing the security, right, if you have any doubt in the cloud categories, you cannot be a good engineer in the cloud, right? So this is what you have to be the very, you can say that this is the base, right, of a cloud. So let's discuss, right? So when we say on-prem environment, right, so when we do not using a cloud service, we are managing networking, we are managing storage, we are managing servers, we are managing virtualizations, we are managing OS, middleware, runtime, data, and the application. So when I'm saying that, even before that, we are using the infra. In terms of infra, we are using racks, we are using electricity, we are using networking, we are taking care of switches, right? So if one switch goes down, we have to add two switches, right? With the redundancy, we have to use that routers, we have to take care of that internet service providers who connect to the router. So if one service provider goes down, then how it will, then we have to take care of storages. If one of my storage goes down, that is it mean that I will lose all that data? No, to just secure that data, I have to create two SANs or two NAS in the, to provide the resiliency. I have to spend so much cost, I have to purchase a hardware. I then, if I want to use multiple OSs on the single platform, then I have to purchase a ESX, like in the VMware we have a virtualization management software that is called ESXi. Then we have to purchase a license. Then if we are deploying Microsoft operating system, we have to purchase that license for that. Then what applications we are going to deploy, we have to purchase the license for that. Then we have to take care of its runtime, we have to take care of data, then that application which is providing that services. So everything we have to manage. So when we have to migrate to the cloud, right, so cloud provider will ask you that, okay, what service you want to use. We have a three types of services. These are basically the basic services we have now. For the marketing purpose, they are providing that desktop as a service, or so security software as a service. So for that marketing purpose, they are creating multiple categories, but these are the three basic categories in every cloud environment. That is, one is the infrastructure as a service. So in the infrastructure as a service, networking, storage, server, and the virtualization's responsibility will be a cloud service provider. So you do not need to worry about that routers, you do not need to worry about the routing, you do not need to be worried about VTP, STPs, VLANs, you do not need to worry about that storage redundancies or the data which is stored on the storage. You do not need to worry about the viruses or the servers or the virtualizations, right? So these all things will be managed by cloud service provider. So they will provide you that virtualization environment. You have to deploy your own OS, your application, then you have to handle your application, whatever the configuration changes or you need to do, how that application will integrate with your databases. Then you have to manage that data and the application. So these blue parts your organization needs to manage, and this red part cloud service provider will manage, right? So as you see in this, only 4 components will be managed by cloud service provider, and these things you will manage. So here you will pay less amount to cloud service provider. Why? Because you are also managing that, right? But when you don't want to purchase a operating system license, you do not want to take care of your servers patching, your OS patching, right, then you can go for a platform as a service. So in that platform as a service, you do not need to worry about network, storage, server, virtualization, and what OS on the backend they are using, like Windows server they are using. Then you do not need to purchase a license, you do not need to be worried about that every monthly patching or a weekly patchings. You do not need to take care about the updates of the application which is installed on that, right? The security, you only need to be take care of that when the users will access that data, or if your application will run that data it will generate, you have to take care of that data and you have to take care of your application. So in that you have to be only worry about these two components, right? So for that, here you see that lot of components will be managed by a cloud service provider, so they will increase the cost. And that best service which cloud service providers always try to sell is that they says that, okay, we do not need your application, we already have that application, so you guys can use, right? So let's take an example of Microsoft Exchange. If currently in your on-prem environment you are using a Microsoft Exchange and you are saying that we will deploy our Exchange services to the cloud, right? The first offer that cloud service provider will give you, no sir, we don't go with that Exchange service, we are providing you that Office 365, right? So you use our services, you do not need to worry about network, storage, server, virtualization, OS, middleware, runtime, even the data we will also take care. And you do not need to be worried about that application interfaces or the uptime, everything we will manage, right? So you just need internet connectivity, you can create users, you can create accounts, and you can publish or you can provide to your internal employees, right? So everything we will manage. So if you will go with the software as a service, you have to pay much more amount, right? So this is your decision, right? So if your organization is saying that, okay, like if you already have a Palo Alto license and F5 license, right, then why you want to use their load balancing services or their WAF services? You can deploy your own Palo Alto on the infrastructure, on the Cisco ASA on the infrastructure. But yes, if the next year your license will be expire, right, and again when you have to renew that, then you can calculate the cost, right? So based on all these calculations that we will discuss in that designing parts, right, when we have to pick which cloud categories, right? So these are the basic 3 cloud categories, right, in every cloud service provider. So I hope you guys are understanding, right? So after this, these are some basic cloud models, right? So when I'm saying that cloud models, right, so one is public cloud, right? So when I'm saying that public cloud like AWS or Azure or Google or IBM, right? These are the cloud service providers who are providing their services to the customers globally, right? So there is no restrictions. So if your organization wants to use their services, what you need to do, you just need to create one account on that and you can use their services. So this is called a public cloud. Then what is private cloud, right? So private cloud is just like your local data center, right, which your organization is managing. So if somebody is in your organization wants to access their services, they will deploy their data center in any of the third party data center like Equinix or in Airtel data center or in IBM data center, and then the users of their organization will access their services from remotely or from their office, right? So in the private cloud, you have to purchase a hardware, you have to manage the networking, you have to manage the OS, everything. You have to manage that complete data security or a network security or a perimeter security. In the public cloud, we have a shared responsibility. This public cloud works on a tenancy model that we will discuss. So in the private cloud, this will be like your dedicated data center, right? Where in that server, only your services are deployed. So there is no any other third party customer services are deployed. So if you have to deploy a service, then you have to deploy a server with the 16 GB RAM, right? And if your services are using only 4 GB, right, then 12 GB will be waste for you, right? You cannot share that 12 GB with anyone else. And in future, if due to high demand or high traffic, your memory is utilizing 18 to 20 GB, right? So you can't do until you will not add new memory, right? So this is called a private cloud. So what is okay, so then we will discuss a hybrid cloud, right? So what is hybrid cloud? So in that hybrid cloud, when some of the your services are in your on-prem, right, and some of the services you deployed in the cloud, right? So let's take an example, like you have one web application service, right? So earlier it was on your office local data center, you have migrated to the cloud. So whenever users has to access, they are able to access on the cloud. But when it needs to be username and password, that website will again go back to your on-prem, uh, and it will check in your local database, because that database is already currently hosted in your on-prem. And if you are using a active directory, right, that active directory will authenticate user, and the database will check the authorization and the IDP tokens, and then again it will give that token to that your web application, or that token it will give to your user, and based on that token they are able to access the web services. But see, in this in service, all the services are not managed by a cloud. So some of the services are deployed on the cloud, and some of the services are deployed on the on-prem environment. So this, in such scenarios, when your system or your environment is using cloud as well as the on-prem environment, that is called a hybrid cloud. There is one more term that is called a multi-cloud, right? It is not mentioned here. So when I'm saying multi-cloud, so when some of your services are hosted on AWS, like as I said, when I'm saying that AWS Azure, right? In Azure, we are using a Microsoft Active Directory, right? Users are trying to log into the AWS web services, but they are currently integrated with that Azure Active Directory. So they send a request to Azure directory. They will confirm that this is a valid username and password. They will reply on that. Then user will able to access. So when we are using a multiple clouds, then we will say a hybrid cloud. The last term is community cloud, right? So what is community cloud? So community cloud is that when group of companies build one common data center. Like if I have an organization named IBM, right? IBM and TCS, right? So like if I'm taking an example of Aadhaar card, right? So Aadhaar card database is managed by a TCS, right? I'm not sure now who is managing that. So earlier they were managing the database of that Aadhaar card, and similarly the platform or the website where you can register, and that was managed by IBM, right? So they both organizations are worked on one single government project, right? So what they did, they built one common data center where no Accenture, no other public user or any enterprise company can create account. They cannot access that. But yes, these two organizations can use all the services within the data center, and that will be a shared services for only these two organizations, and that will be accessible for only these two users. So even the network responsibility, security responsibility, data responsibility, your FinOps, financial operations, we says that, or the investment, everything will be managed by only these two organizations. So this is called a community model. So these can be a 2, these can be 3, or these can be 4, or these can be n number of organizations. But yes, that will be only restricted to that n number of organizations, not for a public use, right? So this is a cloud model we discussed, and this is the cloud categories we discussed. What are the cloud categories? What are the characteristics? Okay, so I think I missed this part, right? So during this course, right, for that 3 or 4 months of this course, what we will help you to prepare, we will not only help you to prepare for that exams content or a syllabus content, right? We will also explain you that what type of questions comes in the exams, right? And what are the interview questions generally organization asked, how they will check your experience, right? How they will give you scenarios, right? What they will try to judge, what are the live scenario examples. We will explain you that how in the enterprise organizations sorry, these cloud environments are set up, so that in an interview if somebody will ask you that, okay, so what is the live scenarios or what is your organization setup, so we will give you multiple examples on that, right? And then how we can design the architecture in the cloud, we will share our experience, right, in multiple organizations where we are deployed new services or migrate multiple services, how we managed everything. And we will also provide you that online portal for revisions and the lab practices, right? So that we will cover. So apart from that, this is what, so this is the very basic thing, right? What is a region and what is availability zone? So everything, right? Every service we are using in the cloud, right? It works in the, sorry, I will not say every service, right? So maximum services we are deploying based on the regions, right? And in that regions we have a availability zones, right? So let me explain you. Right, so what is a region, right? So a region is a geographical location, right? So let's suppose this is in my Singapore region, right? In I have some services in Singapore, I have some offices in Singapore, right? So I will create one region. I will select one region in the AWS management console, that is a Singapore, right? There I will deploy my web services. There I will deploy my servers, because my office is in, some of the offices in Singapore or Philippines, so that they will get a less latency. And my head office is in UK or US, right? So for my head office, I will select one region that is called a US region. In US, like in India, we have a Mumbai region. In Australia, we have a Sydney region, a Melbourne region, right? So I will show you that on that dashboard. So based on that, where my company is hosted, or on which region I have a requirements, right? So based on that, I will launch that services on that region, right? And then we can connect these regions with our services, right? To sync our data between the resources or the services, right? But in that region, right, if let's suppose I launched one server, or if I deployed one firewall, right, or if I deployed one database, right, if this goes down, right, then how I will manage that redundancy? So to work on that, that cloud service providers give us a feature to called availability zones. So what are these availability zones? So these availability zones are just like your data centers, right? So let's suppose if I'm taking example of Mumbai, right? So I have my office or my services in Mumbai. So I will select Mumbai region. In Mumbai region, in every region, they have a multiple availability zone. In some of the regions, AWS is providing 3 availability zones. When I'm saying availability zones, 3 data centers, right? In some of the regions, they have a 2 data centers, and some of the regions they have a 4, and maximum they have a 5, right? So why they are providing that availability zones? So availability zone, as I said, is just like a data centers, right? That provide the redundancies. Like if this availability zone goes down, right, then I have a services on another availability zone, so it will not impact my availability, or it will not impact my services. So how they are segregating that availability zones? So when I select a server, region, right? So, and when I'm trying to launch a server, it will ask me that, okay, in this region, I have these availability zones. So on which availability zone you want to launch? Availability zone 1, 2, or 3. I will launch one server in this availability zone, one in another availability zone. So in case if this availability there this data center goes down, then I can access that services. And you just know that make sure that these both data centers are always not on that same physical locations. There might be apart from a few kilometers, but that will be in that Mumbai region, right? So in case of any power cut, right, or any natural disaster, this one availability zone goes down, you can access the services through the other availability zone. But if you have a very critical services, then from a BCP perspective, from a DR perspective, you can also replicate your services from Mumbai to Singapore, right? So that if your Mumbai region goes down, all your services can be remain accessible through the Singapore. So these all scenarios we will cover in load balancings or a DNS load balancing stuffs. Right. So this is what availability zone. So this is the end of this demo PPT. So I will just show you that. Okay, so this, when you will log into the management console, right? So just go to the Google type AWS management console, right? So this will be the link. So once you will click on that, you will get an option whether you want to sign into the console. Like I have already logged in, so that is why it is not giving me option to sign up, right? So log into the Google console, login back, because I am already logged in. Otherwise you guys will get a sign up account. So once you will log in, so these are the list of services, right? So AWS is providing, right? So if I'm saying that databases, if I will click their databases services, so these are the list of relational and the non-relational databases: DynamoDB, Elastic Cache, Keyspace, RDS, DynamoDB, DocumentDB, right? So similarly, if I will go to that compute services, it will give me the Elastic Cloud Computing, how I can build a image builder, Beanstalk, Lambda, Lightsails, right? So these are the list of services. So let's take example of any of the service, right? This is very basic Elastic Cloud Computing, right? This Elastic Cloud Computing is a service where we can launch a or build a servers, right? So if I will, you see, so if I'm going to create one server, so how many options, let's cancel that, right? So in this portal, it is showing that how many number of EC2 instance I have, right? So you see that once I will build a EC2 cloud computing, if I know that what type of instances we have, whether we can launch that with any template, what is spot request, what is saving plan, what is reserved instances, what are the dedicated host, so AMI, Amazon machine images, Elastic block storage, which type of storage we have to connect, what snapshots, what life cycles, network security group, elasticity IP, right? So everything, load balancing, auto scaling, so everything we have to understand that, right? So it is very all the services are very interconnected, right? For EC2 we have a separate security, for S3 we have a separate security, for VPC we have a separate security, for database we have a separate security, right? So if I will go for their simple storage services, like they have a S3, this is their storage service where we can store raw data, right? So in that S3 storage, if I will create account, they will have a multiple security options, right? So every, and how we will connect that S3 with the servers, how we will access from external environment, everything, what is versioning, what is tagging, what is encryption, what is server-side encryption, what is client-side encryption, what are the key management, what type of encryption keys, where we have to store, how it will connect to KMS, or how it will connect to what from the compliance perspective, what are the object locks we will deploy, right? So everything we will cover in that. So as I said that, right? So you see that when I clicked Amazon S3 service, right? So this S3 is a global service, right? So this is my global service. From here, you can see that. And when I will go to any EC2 service, this is a region-based service, right? Now you see that if I click on EC2, right, it will ask me that on which region you want to deploy, right? So this is North Virginia. This is my US regions. These are my Asia Pacific regions. These are my US regions. So you have to select that regions based on your company offices or your branches or your business requirements, right? So even if your customers on a separate region and your offices are not there, and but you want to provide a good performance, for that we can use edge services, CDN services, that everything we will cover, right? So now this is what we have in that demo session, right? So now if you guys have any query, I am open for all your queries.
So guys, let me give you the mute permissions. So guys, now you have the mute permission. Whatever questions you are having, you can ask. We are here to help you.
Yeah, Manpreet, this is Rajeshwar. I've been working in security field for the last 15 years, but I'm supporting most of the time premise-based firewalls, or sometimes even I'm working with the Zscaler as well. But if I
Okay.
learn this, cloud part, how this is going to helpful for me, like in terms of enhancing my services in the
Yeah,
future.
Rajesh. Yep. Rajesh, so is your organization currently migrated the services to the cloud or not?
Not it.
Not. Okay. So I definitely, all the big organizations, right, or the MNCs are migrating the services, or almost, as I already mentioned in my PPTs, by end of 2025, all the 80% of their environment will migrate to the cloud, right? So if you will look for a better opportunity in the industry, right, and if you will go with just a firewalls or with your on-prem security environments, they will ask you that, okay, we know that, right, but our environment is on the cloud, so how you will manage that security, right? Because in the on-prem, they will not deploy databases, they will not deploy servers in the future, right? Then if you are not aware about that security, then it will be difficult, right, for you to exist after 2 years or 3 years in this market. And apart from that, once you will complete that, you will have a multiple options. As I said, that currently in the market there is a huge demand, right? The company wants engineers, but the supply is not as much as the demand is. So this is the very right time where you can enter to this cloud security industry. And honestly, as you said that you have a 15 years of experience, right? So you have a good understanding of CIA trade, you know what is confidentiality, integrity, how we can manage availability, how we can design the scenarios in terms of failovers, right? So how we can protect the data, how we can protect the security. So this experience will help you, right, when you will learn that cloud skills. So it will be not like you that you will be considered as a fresher, right? Because the base is same. The only thing is that we do not know the understanding or the terminologies of the cloud, or we never get exposures on the cloud security tools, right? So the base is same, but you have to learn that tool. So once you will learn that tools, once you will write that tools or the technologies on the CV, you will see the results in after 5 or 6 months, right? So you will definitely see that results.